The strategic defense relationship between Brazil and Sweden did not begin with fighter jets, as many observers assume, but with radar. When Brazil adopted the Erieye airborne early warning radar from Saab and integrated it onto the Embraer R99 platform, this decision created the first technological bridge between Brasilia and Stockholm. Long before a single Gripen rolled out of the hangar in Brazil, Brazilian engineers and officers had already begun absorbing Swedish expertise in sensor architecture, data processing, and networked surveillance. Erieye was not just a radar, it was a strategic handshake, and it established trust years before the fighter program took shape. From this starting point, Brazil built its foundation in airborne early warning capability. The Erieye-equipped R99, later redesignated E99, allowed Brazil to monitor airspace across vast maritime and terrestrial regions. The radar's ability to detect low-flying aircraft, drones, and even surface vessels gave Brazil a surveillance lens more sophisticated than anything previously available in South America. In operating this system, Brazil gained practical experience in tracking multiple targets and filtering atmospheric interference. More importantly, it learned how to feed and process tactical information across command networks. This was not simply a hardware acquisition, but a school of applied electronic warfare. As this capability matured, Brazil began shaping its own command and control architecture. The E99 became a platform that connected aircraft, ground stations, and command nodes in real time. Brazil used this to refine principles of C4ISR, command, control, communications, computers, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. The lesson was that warfare is no longer defined by individual platforms acting alone. Instead, it is defined by systems exchanging data seamlessly. Brazil learned to see the battlefield as a picture composed of distributed sensors rather than isolated actors. This conceptual shift prepared Brazil for the next major leap, the introduction of the Gripen E. Unlike many legacy fighters, Gripen was designed from the start to operate as part of a data-rich, sensor-connected battle network. It can receive target data from E99 aircraft, from ground radar, from other Gripens, and even from future unmanned systems. Brazil did not simply purchase a fighter aircraft. It acquired the core of an ecosystem in which the fighter is only one node in a complex information web. In this model, the E99 becomes the eye, while the Gripen becomes the sword. Neither is optimal without the other. The technological relationship deepened as Brazil embarked on local assembly and co-development of the Gripen. Unlike many arms transactions in the developing world, this was not a simple purchase. It was a transfer of process knowledge. Brazilian engineers became involved in integration work, structural design adaptation, and eventually the establishment of domestic manufacturing capabilities. The collaboration between Saab and Embraer allowed Brazil not just to operate the platform, but to understand its anatomy. This represents a transition from being a consumer of defense technology to a co-owner and developer of it. This deep partnership also reflects Sweden's strategic calculation. Stockholm recognizes Brazil as a stable partner outside the orbit of the United States and outside the competing sphere of Russia and China. Sweden has historically been willing to share defense technology with partners it trusts, but rarely at the level of structural access it has granted Brazil. This illustrates a geopolitical alignment rooted not in military alliance, but in shared industrial philosophy, autonomy, sovereignty, and technological self-determination. Brazil gains something else from this relationship: insulation from dependence. If Brazil had bought a traditional AEW system from the United States or a fighter from a NATO-dominated supplier, it might face political constraints on upgrades, data use, and interoperability. By contrast, Sweden treats Ecuador, Singapore, and especially Brazil as independent actors. Brazilian officers control their own data. Brazilian engineers gain real insight into systems. Brazilian sovereignty remains intact. This is an often overlooked advantage of the Sweden-Brazil axis. It respects national independence. Looking ahead, the technological interplay between the two countries is likely to expand. The experience with Erieye may evolve into more domestic radar manufacturing competencies within Brazil. The Gripen program may serve as a stepping stone for Brazil to develop its own strike drones or even indigenous fighter components. The future may include integrated networks linking E-99 aircraft, Gripen fighters, naval assets, satellites, and ground radars, creating a Brazilian domain awareness grid that extends from the Amazon interior to the deep Atlantic. Brazil is therefore not simply becoming stronger militarily, it is becoming more self-reliant. It is moving from platform-centric thinking, buying impressive aircraft or ships, to network-centric thinking, where information superiority and coordination become the decisive factors of power. This shift will likely define Brazilian defense doctrine through to 2035 and beyond. It is a transition marked not by loud demonstrations of force, but by quiet mastery of data. Seen in this light, the Erieye on the humble Embraer airframe becomes the quiet ancestor of the Gripen partnership. The radar was the teacher, the network was the classroom, and the fighter became the graduating student. The relationship was built not on spectacular combat displays, but on engineering cooperation and intellectual transfer. From Sweden's perspective, Brazil is not just a customer, it is an emerging peer in a shared defense technology ecosystem. From Brazil's perspective, Sweden is not just a supplier, it is an enabler of sovereign capability. In the long view, the axis formed by Brazil and Sweden may prove more consequential than many formal alliances. It is not based on treaty, obligation, or fear of mutual enemies. It is based on trust in shared engineering, shared competency, and shared ambition. It is the kind of relationship that builds capability instead of dependency. As the next decades unfold, Brazil's confidence in operating advanced systems will expand, its domestic industry will mature, and its role as a technologically sovereign defense actor will solidify. And when analysts trace back where this transformation began, they will not point first to the Gripen. They will point to Erieye, flying quietly over the South Atlantic, teaching Brazil how to see.